there's a difference between criticizing and complaining. Your marriage, there's no healthy marriages that have criticism in it. Hey, right now we're gonna give you the 4 reasons most people get divorced. I'm Joe.
I'm Chrissy.
And welcome to The Married Life. But we're gonna jump right into it. We wanna talk about the 4 reasons, 4 sub-reasons that people get divorced. Number 1, criticism. We criticize our spouses very much. Now here's the difference, okay? There's a difference between criticizing and complaining. Your marriage, there's no healthy marriages that have criticism in it. Even thinking about this, you don't like critics for movies, right? Critics don't direct movies, they don't write movies, they don't act in movies, they just criticize a movie that they cannot do anything about.
Yeah.
Nobody likes a critic, but when you have somebody that can have a healthy place to complain, that is healthy. Yeah. That is okay. And so you want to make sure when you're bringing things to your spouse, you're not always saying, you always. You, pointing the finger.
You did this or you didn't do that.
Right. You're always late for dinner. You never text me that you're running behind. What else?
Right. I think it's the never and the always statements and pointing the finger. It's saying you did this, you did this.
Yep.
That's never going to lead you anywhere. Think about it. Think about if somebody comes at you like that. How are you going to respond?
Yep.
You need to have empathy within your marriage and think, okay, well, this is it. And it's probably, we've all done it, but it's never worked.
Yep.
We just get caught up in our emotions and we start to say, you did this to me. Well, I think that's a big problem with the world. The world did this to me. My boss did this to me. We need to take responsibility.
That's it. Because we want to blame everyone for the issues. Even in our marriage, we want to blame our spouse. So if you've ever recognized yourself criticizing or your spouse criticizing, hit that share button now. And again, if you're on YouTube or wherever you're watching, you can subscribe, you can comment below. But when you complain to your spouse of the way that you're feeling, so Chrissy and I, we talked about this a couple weeks ago when we do a marriage checkup. What are 3 things I'm doing good? What's 1 thing I could work on? She brought up the conversation of it always feels like you want to hug me or kiss me only when you're trying to get with me. Like that was the conversation. And so that was healthy for me. Like she was saying, I feel like you only want to have sex with me, and that's the only time you kiss or engage intimately with me, not just because you love me. And so again, she wasn't pointing the finger at me saying, you only do this, you only do this. She was saying, I feel.
And it might not have been the case. That might not have been 100% true, but that's just how I felt. So I communicated my feelings about it. And so, but I was not degrading. I did not make him feel bad about it. I just was able to share with him. Yep. So I pointed at myself, this is the way that this makes me feel versus you always.
So a way, like the antidote is, instead of criticism, it's actually complaining. But here's where the secret is. It's in how you start to complain. When you come out guns a-blazing and you're at a 10 and you're setting the house on fire, it is not going to go good. You want to come in, research shows that where the level of the conversation is in the first 3 minutes, usually it's not going to get past that. So again, if you come in at a 10 in the first 3 minutes, the whole thing's going to be a screaming match. But if you just say, hey, honey, you know what? Tonight I would love to talk to you about something I've been noticing in our marriage. Can we do that? Like, let them know, hey, this is coming. There is something that's bugging me. I'd like to have the conversation. And it's just going to be that. It's going to be a conversation. We're not going to fight about it. We're not going to argue about it. We're just going to make sure that we have the right, the tone throughout it. And Chrissy and I, we talked about that, right? The 3 T's, touch, tone, and timing, which we totally ripped off from Pastor Shan Nodell. And it's just really good content. If I'm not ready to have a good tone, I'm not ready to have the talk. And so how is your tone? Okay, the next one is, ready for this? Number 2 leads to divorce. In communication, contempt is contempt. Now, what is contempt? Contempt is getting to that place of I just don't care, right? Like where it's like, you know what, whatever. It's whatever. And even when you think of the word whatever, the word hate is in the middle of the word whatever. Like that's where we get when your spouse wants you to look at something, be part of something, care about something. You're just like, I don't care. Like whatever. Like she's saying, look over here. You're looking that way purposely. Like it's almost like you hear the garage door open and you're like, oh, I'm annoyed that they're home. The way that they eat, you know what I mean? Like there's things that start just getting on your nerve and it's being unhealthy.
Yeah. Do you want to go to the antidote of that one?
Sure.
Okay. So the antidote of contempt is, and this is really difficult, especially when you're already feeling this way, because contempt is something that you have to work really, really hard at to get out of. But it's appreciation. the opposite of contempt is appreciation. There are a lot of things that you do appreciate about your spouse. There really are. But I think we've gotten so comfortable within our marriages, especially the longer that you've been married. You see more of the things that they're lacking in or the things that they're failing at than seeing the things that they are actually doing good at. And so you have to fight for appreciation, and I would say gratefulness.
Yep.
And communicating those things. Do not fall into the trap of contentment, but really show them, him, her, that you appreciate them and verbalize it, show it in whatever way that works for them. You need to constantly learn your spouse. The longer that you're married, your love language might change, so you need to constantly learn and grow in that area, but you need to constantly show them that you appreciate them. It might be small things. It might be their work ethic, that they actually get up and go to work every day. A lot of men don't do that. And so if they do that, tell them that you appreciate them, and be like, use details. Like, just don't say I appreciate you. Like, why? Why do you appreciate me?
There's always things that we can find in the relationship that we can be grateful for. The problem with our society is we focus and magnify the negative.
Yeah.
Our news does it. Social media does it. Just put it out there. Anything, think about it. Always magnifies the negative. So when you're saying, I'm going to magnify the positive, you're going to see your marriage actually go up. And actually, research even shows when you actually practice gratitude in your life, you actually release endorphins into your brain, and you actually have more joy. So if you're more grateful for your spouse and speak that into them, you're going to have more joy over your life. Somebody had a good question. They said, we live with his mom. He has to split his attention and time between me and his kids. He won't move. And then she said, I think I'm on the step of contempt.
Contempt, yeah. So I think in your heart, you need to start learning to appreciate what Joe does in the morning, which I think is a really great tool that maybe I think you could start doing, is he has a gratitude journal. I don't know if it's like a completely separate journal, but it's probably in the journal. But he literally will just list a few things every morning that he is grateful for. And I think for you, you can just start doing that specifically for your spouse. Whatever it may be, just start listing things every single morning. Okay, this morning I am grateful for this about him, specifics. Yep. And sometimes it might be repetitive, but it's going to retrain your brain to start thinking about the positives instead of the negatives. And I think a lot of people don't understand or don't notice that they give off those vibes. Whatever you're thinking, you can't hide it externally.
Yep.
It will eventually come out in your body language,
Yep.
in your verbiage, in the way that you're treating them, whatever. So you need to change your thinking first and foremost. And I think that will start to get you on the right track. But stay tuned, because there's other things that will help you as well.
Yeah. And also, just so you know, because somebody said, who made you experts? We're not experts. We're marriage enthusiasts. We've been married for 13 years now. We've been known each other for 21 years. We have a passion for marriage, a passion for what God created, the unity between man and wife. And then also, but what we're sharing right now is actually from an expert, the Gottman Institute, that they've done research across countless marriages. So you can go and Google that, person who said, who made you an expert? We're not experts, but Gottman is, and this is just his stuff that we are sharing with you, because you probably have never heard it before. The third one is defensiveness.
This is a big one.
This is huge, right? Because again, when we have contempt in our life, and if our spouse begins to come at us and criticize something, we get defensive right away, because again, it's not a conversation. It's not a healthy place to complain. And now, because I'm sick of you anyways, and my mindset's already whatever, my defense is up, like, well, oh, you don't think I do that? Well, you never. And all of a sudden the finger pointing just goes back and forth, and there's nothing that is what's it called? Something that's built strong on finger pointing. Like, even looking at our government, right? You have the left and the right side, and they're just pointing fingers at each other. And literally, as I listen to some of their stances, I'm like, well, can't we take a little bit of this, a little bit of that? But they don't want to do that. It really is like, I don't want to be a team. We are opponents. But in marriage, you aren't opponents. You are a team.
Yeah.
And so that's where that defensiveness, we have to break those walls down.
Yeah. The antidote to this is actually taking responsibility. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of kickback on this, because you're going to say, you don't know my spouse. They do this. They're abusive and all this kind of stuff. I have to say it every single time. Abuse is not tolerated. When we talk about things, abuse is not a part of the conversation that we're talking about. if you are in an abusive situation, you have to leave. You have to get out and get help and get them help. I'm not talking about abuse right now. I am talking about a pretty average marriage that is struggling on the daily to get this right. And so the opposite of defensiveness is taking responsibility.
Yep.
I don't care who you are. It could be 99% their fault and 1% your fault. And here's the thing. If you take responsibility for the 1%, you could literally change your marriage.
Yep.
You could change the outcome of an argument by just taking responsibility. Because here's the thing. If I come at you and I'm super defensive and I'm super mad and da-da-da-da, but then you come at me and you're like, oh my gosh, I did not know that even made you. I am immediately gonna start I'm gonna go from a 10 to at least a 8, a 7. I'm gonna bring my tone down, and I'm not gonna continue on this rage and this rant. And so taking responsibility, and it's probably highly unlikely that it's even 1% your fault, but you have to take responsibility for what you have done, or not even done, for what you've let happen in your marriage. Sometimes it's just saying, what's the word I'm looking for, that you tolerate. Sometimes we're just tolerating things in our marriage. My little 2-year-old is at the window. Don't worry, my mother-in-law's inside. But sometimes it's just saying, I should have never have tolerated it. Whether it's letting your kids run the household, I've tolerated that. Yep. I should have had the kids in order more, or I should have done this or have done that. But taking responsibility, not for their behavior, but for your behavior.
Yep.
And that takes deep thinking and deep reflection of yourself. Sometimes that might not be just a quick 10-minute conversation. Sometimes this is a lot of self-reflecting, and maybe a counselor needs to be involved in saying, why do I do this? Is it just because my parents did it this way? You have to really self-reflect, be humble, and take responsibility.
Yeah, I like what somebody said on here. They said take accountability for your behavior.
It's so true.
And that is. That's huge, to be able to take accountability for your own behavior. Hey, if this is helping you, hit that like button, hit that share button, subscribe, so we can keep sharing this and helping more couples out. The next thing that this leads to, okay, when you are...
This is a really good question. What if you keep telling your spouse what bothers you, but he keeps doing it? Is narcissism okay? I'm going to tell you right now, narcissism is one of the hardest things to get out of your marriage. And I don't know if you're a believer or not. We are believers.
Believer in Christ.
Yeah, you have to pray. Literally, you have to pray that out of your spouse, because there is nothing, I'm not saying nothing. It takes a lot of hard work and counseling. Even if he won't go to counseling, you can, to help with that. Narcissism is it's big. And so I believe it's spiritual, and you really need to pray for your husband. But to answer your question, no, narcissism is not okay.
And for anyone that's watching and you're not married yet, one of the healthiest conversations you can have before marriage is, hey, can we agree upon whenever you're feeling a certain way, we can sit down and have the conversation, or get counselors, and we won't get offended by it. If you're ever feeling, again, that I'm not listening to you, that you're bringing up the issue of what bothers you, that we can actually sit down and have that conversation. Because too many couples don't, and then these things arise, right? And then you get to that place like, oh my gosh, how do I deal with this? Because again, you're willing to deal with it, but he's not. Mm-hmm. And so that's where, we share with a lot. And again, you're already married, but for anyone that's not married,
she's a Christian and he's not. So.
Yeah. For anyone that is, that's not married yet, having these healthy conversations, because Chrissy and I, we've seen this so many times from being in ministry for so many years, marrying so many people, doing so much premarital counseling, so much marriage coaching. The person you marry is the person that is going to be your spouse. That sounds stupid when I say it, but a lot of people think I'm gonna marry them and they're gonna change. Listen, if they drink before you're married, why do you think they're gonna stop drinking when you get married? You know what I mean? And again, that's a whole nother subject.
For you said you're a Christian and he's not. The Power of a Praying Wife is a really good book for you.
Mm-hmm. And also, I love that you said you tried counseling. He's not willing to. I would still say for you doing
keep
counseling.
Going. You keep going.
Because if you think about it this way, if if Chrissy and I, right, are workout partners, okay, we want to go to the gym together, but then she's like, you know what, I'm not going to go to the gym. Well, am I going to get stronger by just being like, well, she doesn't want to go to the gym, I'm not going to go to the gym either? No, if I go to the gym, I'm going to get healthier. And sooner or later, she's going to see that. And then I'm believing she's going to want to go with me. And it's the same thing for counseling, is that you're going and you're going to get stronger. And sooner or later, he's going to see that. And also, it's going to protect your heart, because if not, you could get to that place where, again, you start criticizing him for not wanting to get counseling. You start having contempt with the way that when he starts talking about something else, when you're just like, whatever, all of a sudden you start getting defensive anytime he brings something up to you now, which leads to our third thing, which is stonewalling.
That's 4.
Thank you. Numbers are hard.
Yeah.
Our fourth thing, stonewalling. And what does that lead to? Stonewalling is putting up the wall. Stonewalling is like, I don't even hear you, I don't care, I don't see you, whatever you have to say is just it's a waste of my time.
Yeah.
And all of these, if you see, they all play into each other. That criticism leads to contempt, that contempt leads to defensiveness leads to stonewalling, because again, when you feel like your spouse is always coming at you, eventually you just put up the wall, because you're like, they're not trying to have a conversation, they're just trying to attack me. And what did cities used to do in ancient times when people would attack? They would build up walls. And that's exactly what a spouse will end up doing.
Yeah, and I think for this one's really frustrating, especially if your spouse is stonewalling you, because it's like you can't do anything. Like, what do you do when they're not responding to you? And so the antidote to stonewalling is self-soothing. You have to be okay with you. Okay? You have to learn different techniques and different things that are healthy and they're not self-sabotaging. Here's the important thing. You have to make sure these things are not self-sabotaging. Some self-sabotaging things would be posting it all over the internet on your social media. Do not do that. Do not go and complain to your family members or your very close friends, because the thing that happens when you do that, let's say like I'm super mad at Joe and I just go vent to my family. What happens is when we reconcile in that thing, my family has not reconciled. And now it's my family against Joe and I'm stuck in the middle, but it was my fault. So that is self-sabotaging. Drinking is self-sabotaging, right? That's not going to make it any better. If you go to the bar, if you go do this, you're going to make even more stupid decisions because you're frustrated. And the thing is you're going to say, I deserve this. I can do this.
Yep.
I didn't do it. I'm just trying to get through this. And so those are self-sabotaging, self-soothing techniques. You need to find ways, like Joe said, going to the gym, that's healthy. Going for a walk, that's healthy. Talking to a counselor, a pastor, or a mediator that you know that it's going to be safe and there's no, like, not a family mediator, but it's safe for you to complain to them about your spouse, not criticize. And so you need to find some ways that help you do that.
Also, something that you'll see in relationships, oftentimes there's the person that is ready to go and have the conversation right away. And then there's the person that's like, hey, I need time to actually like think on this, digest this. What Chrissy and I do is we do our 24-hour rule. That means that if I'm saying, hey, listen, I know you have some complaints right now, and I recognize that we need to work this out, but I need to think through this and process it, then I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to take 24 hours and then I'll come back to you. And that's where, again, I'm not stonewalling her. I'm not putting up the wall saying I don't want to talk to you at all about this. I'm saying, let me gather my thoughts. Let me take some time. Let me go for a walk. Let me go to the gym. Let me read a book. Like what calms you down? Because again, when you're coming in and they're having that conversation, all of a sudden your heart rate's going up, your blood pressure's going up. You got to get to that place of saying, okay, you know what? I recognize, right? Taking accountability for myself. I recognize where I'm feeling. I need to separate myself from this, but then also be mature enough to revisit this conversation in 24 hours. Because the same thing as stonewalling is leaving and not coming back and revisiting the conversation.
Yeah.
Your spouse will feel ignored if you say, hey, I'm going to come back in 24 hours and you never do.
Yeah.
You're saying like, that's brushing under the rug. That's thinking like, oh, they forgot about it because they didn't bring it up. No, you said you needed a break. So you take the break, but then you bring it back up in 24 hours because that's building trust with your spouse. Because your spouse wants to talk to you about something that's bothering them, and it's going to build up that trust.
Yeah, no, that's good. So that's the 4 horsemen. and the antidotes.
Hey, if these subcategories, 4 reasons that people get divorced, helped you out and are going to help your marriage, hit that subscribe button now, and you can hit that notification bell to always see when we actually put out content for you.